could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, I'm back like cook crack. Back for the second time today because we have news. Washington getting this offseason kicked off. We started with Scott Turner being fired. Now we've gotten to a point where we've hired a new offensive coordinator / assistant head coach in Eric Bieniemy. We're going to continue to see them, fill out the rest of the staff as guys have moved on. You've got to fill the void left by your defensive backs coach, Chris Harris, who has moved on to the Tennessee Titans. You've got to fill a void at receiver coach after moving on from Drew Terrell. You've got to figure out what you're going to do at quarterback coach. I think they're going to bring in Tavita Pritchard. And what role will then Ken Zampese have? So we're going to have some moving parts here. I think Greg Lewis is going to fill that wide receiver coach role. What are they going to do at defensive backs coach? Are they going to promote from within? We'll see what happens with all of that. But as we continue to wait on all the rest of the dominoes to fall, meanwhile, the roster is going to start to take shape. As you get closer to the start of the new league year, that's the deadline for a lot of this to transpire, because if guys are on the roster by a certain date, then roster bonuses start to kick in and you become fully on the hook for portions of salaries of guys that you don't necessarily want to retain. So you're going to start to see these moves happen here over the next week or two as we approach the start of the new league year. Ron said after the Eric Bieniemy opening presser, once they broke into those scrums after the presser had met its conclusion, that they had already gotten their entire offseason lined up in terms of roster moves, things that they wanted to do. They had all that stuff lined up. Ron said, all we're essentially waiting on is to pull the trigger. Bang, 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 bang. All right, but we already got all our guns loaded, okay? All the ammunition is there. Everything's loaded. Clicked. We just waiting to pull the trigger. And you're seeing that right now, as Washington today made the first of what I think is going to be a series of cuts this offseason. I do not think they're finished. Much like last year when they cut about 4 or 5 players, it was for a different reason. All right, they did not intend to cut, some of the guys that they cut last year. I don't think they intended on cutting Landon Collins. I don't think they intended on cutting Eric Flowers. I don't think they intended on cutting Matt Ioannidis. Those things happened out of necessity when Carson Wentz was brought into the fold. This year, I think they have every intention of cutting some players to help put the cap in a situation that's going to allow them to get to where they need to be to make some of the moves that they're going to ultimately make, i.e. franchise tagging Daron Payne. If the goal is to get a long-term deal done, but until you do, whatever that franchise tag number is, that's what you're on the hook for 1 year. And so I think the Carson Wentz deal is essentially going to take care of that by itself. Releasing Carson Wentz saves you roughly $26 million, $26 million and some change. They also released Bobby McCain today, which was a bit of a surprise to me, but not really. I told you guys last year, or at the end of last season, that Bobby McCain was horrible in the slot. Now, we'll get to more of that here in a second. Let's start with Wentz and talk about his departure. This was inevitable. The minute that he started to play bad and poorly, he got injured, Heineke took over, we started winning football games, and they really didn't want to go back to Wentz until Heineke started to struggle towards the tail end of the season. That told you all you needed to know about Carson Wentz's future here in Washington. Had he come back in that second time around, played well, led this team to the playoffs, he might have been back here. But the sad truth was, once he got inserted into the lineup against Cleveland, went out and stunk it up by throwing 3 interceptions and losing a game at home that we needed to win in order to keep our playoff hopes alive, he was done at that moment. And so this cut comes as a shock to no one. This wasn't a if situation, it was when is he going to be cut. So no one's surprised by this. We were just waiting for the inevitable to take place. It frees up, as I mentioned, a shade over $26 million. I think that money is going to be reallocated to, we're going to call that the Daron Payne Fund, okay? The Daron Payne Fund, you just put that off to the side, and you hope that you get some of that money back from that fund that you set up, right? If you set up a trust fund for your kids to go to college and they never go to college, well, hey, some extra money there. You might say, hey, we saved up $26,000 for you to go to school. You're not going. We'll give you 15 of that. We'll take the other 11 back. Okay. So we're hoping that we'll set aside, $25 million for the Deron Payne fund. If they get a long-term deal back, you're not going to have to use all of that. He'll get a upfront signing bonus, right? Obviously, the base salary won't be as much. You might be able to take some of that money back and reallocate it elsewhere. We'll see what happens with that. But going off of the franchise tag, you're probably going to need just about all of that to take care of him. Anyway, I digress. The shocker for me was Bobby McCain. Not because McCain was playing well, because of what he was in the locker room. He's one of those veterans. We are a very young team. I think people don't recognize. You can say what you want about Ron, but what they've done essentially between what he inherited, which was Payne, Allen, McLaurin, and some of those guys, Sweat, all those guys predated Ron, okay? So there was a lot of talent here, Holcomb, okay? A lot of guys were here before Ron got here. But what you have to give Ron credit for is he added to the small bit of talent that we did have. We didn't have much. He added to that once he got here. He added Curl. He added St. Juice. He added, Jahan Dotson. And he added Antonio Gibson. And the list goes on and on and on. And Chase Young, if he comes back and plays at the level that we expect him to. Brian Robinson. The nucleus of players that we look at, because we're a young team, okay? The Derek Forrests of the world and the Percy Butlers, those are guys that Ron added. All these talented players, okay? And the reacquisition of Kendall Fuller, that's all Ron Rivera, right? So when you look at this team and the youthfulness and the excitement of a bright future, a lot of that credit needs to be given to Ron Rivera. And so we're a very young team. And sometimes when you're a young team, it's the blind leading the blind. You need a few veteran players that have been there before that can tell some of these younger guys, hey, this is how you do it. Because they don't know. Sam Howell isn't going to come into the league and know how he's supposed to work. He needed Carson Wentz and hell, even Taylor Heineke, who just a year ago was looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick and saying, and when he very first got here, Alex Smith is saying, how the hell do I do this? He had a little stint with Tom Brady. That was a cup of coffee. He wasn't there very long, okay? He hadn't been in the league that long. Had a little bit of time with Cam Newton, but I thought the time that he spent the last couple of years with some veteran quarterbacks was invaluable for Taylor Heineke, right? So now he can pass that knowledge on to a young guy in Sam Howell, and also Carson Wentz was able to impart a little bit of knowledge on Sam Howell as well. How to work, how to prepare, how to watch film, how to train, how to prepare your body to take on the rigors of the NFL week. He got to see all of those things. Bobby McCain was one of those guys that held players in that locker room accountable. I loved Bobby for that reason. You guys know that. I was a huge Bobby McCain fan because I felt like he was one of the voices in the locker room, and there weren't many, that held guys accountable for their actions. When he didn't do something right, he'd be the first to tell you, that was on me, okay? And if something else went wrong, he wouldn't tell you or he wouldn't point fingers at anybody, but he would say, hey, we got to be better, okay? So I really appreciated Bobby for that. But the biggest thing for Bobby, and this is when I started to see the writing on the wall where I was like, this isn't good for Bobby, was when they moved Bobby from safety down to nickel, because we're loaded at safety, okay? Between the emergence of Derek Forrest, the drafting of Percy Butler, who played well towards the end of the season, especially the Dallas game when he was flying around, and obviously you've still got some veterans on the back end of that roster. All-Pro Revo is a guy that can fill in if necessary. You've got stuff at safety. We feel really good about what we can put on the field at the safety position, and I didn't even name Cam Curl, right? So we're loaded at safety, okay? Bobby coming down into the slot gave him an opportunity to stay on the field, but he wasn't any good. And I talked about that. I said Bobby wasn't good in the nickel. He wasn't good in the slot. He was getting cooked. The one touchdown we gave up against Dallas, that was Bobby McCain. The Giants' conversion rate in that second game on Sunday Night Football really stemmed from them attacking Bobby McCain in the slot over and over and over again. And I told you, after watching the film, had they just thrown the ball on every third down at Bobby McCain, they would have converted every single third down on the night. They went for it on 4th and 9 and converted on Bobby McCain, okay? Teams were picking on him by the time we got to the back end of the season. He was a weakness. So if he wasn't going to serve a purpose as a nickel defender, then he doesn't serve a purpose at all. So unfortunately, it became a numbers game. We got young safeties that we really like that we're going to get on the field. And so if you can't help us at the one position that we need help at, then you got to go. And so they're going to save a shade over $4 million. So I think it's like $4.5 million or roughly somewhere about by cutting Bobby McCain. And I don't think they're done. I think you could see, I really think they're going to do something at center with Chase Rouillier's contract. I think the first thing you do is you try to restructure. You know, Chase Rouillier is a good football player, and he's had some unfortunate circumstances with his injuries the last 2 seasons. So I think you start there. But I'm just going to tell you, if they're not able to work something out with him, I could see him being a casualty this year and them cutting Chase Rouillier as well. I don't necessarily know if we're going to see anything else done from a offensive line standpoint, whether they move on from Cornelius Lucas or they move on from Charles Leno. I don't think that's going to take place, right? But I think all these other guys, a lot of them were on 1-year deals, so I think they're going to be fine in that regard. But I wouldn't be shocked if we saw 1 or 2 more guys, no longer here. So we'll see what happens, right? But you're seeing things start to happen. They already brought back David Mayo. They already brought back Jonathan Williams at the running back position, right? So the guys that they want, they're showing you this is who we're going to keep. This is who we want around. They may not ultimately make the final 53, those 2 guys that they just signed to a 1-year contract. But they'll be in the mix come training camp. But they're already telling you this is who we want. This is who we're going to discard. And I'm not sure that they're done. Okay, so this offseason is starting to get underway. And as more things happen, we'll talk more about them. But Bobby McCain is the biggest of the 2 here because Wentz we already knew was going to be released. Okay, cost us a couple of 3rd-round picks, cost us $28 million last year. It wasn't going to cost us another red cent. He's now gone. But McCain wasn't good in the slot. And ultimately with the emergence of Defoe and Percy Butler and having Cam Curl, and having, all-pro Revo, you don't need any more safeties. He needed to be able to help in the slot as a nickel, and he just wasn't very good last year. So he became a cap casualty. So as more develops, as more things come out, we'll continue to talk. But as of right now, that's all the news that has been dropped on us on this Monday as we start to wrap up the month of February and head into what is going to be a very busy month of March. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up and take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Not quite dressed in all black like the Omen, but I'm almost there. A couple guys got the axe today. Not sure that they're done. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.